Hi, I'm Laura Meyer, founder and CEO of Envision Horizons, and I am here today with the amazing Lil Fazio.
Yes.
Okay, Lil Fazio is the Senior Vice President of Marketing at Elemis US and is leading brand strategy and omnichannel marketing for the luxury skincare brand. With over 20 years in prestige beauty, she previously spent 7 years at Estee Lauder Companies as the VP of marketing for Bobbi Brown and Bumble and Bumble, where she drove strategies that elevated market share and exceeded financial targets, which every CFO loves from their VP of marketing. For our listeners, we've had the pleasure of working with the Elemis team on their Amazon strategy here at Envision Horizons. It's also great to sit down with our brand partners, dive a little bit deeper, and quite frankly, just get to spend time out of our normal status updates. Lil, it's so great to have you.
Thank you for having me, Laura. Thank you for the intro.
Yeah. And so to liven things up, I want to do a hot take game. You
Let's
might
do
have
it.
seen this on social, but there is a game out there where I will share with you a marketing tactic. And the reason I want to play this game is I think there is so much marketers can do. And it's almost like shiny object syndrome. There's a lot going on. And so I'm going to ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being it's a must, 1 being not worth it, what you would recommend. So we're going to go ahead.
Great.
And I'm just going to fast shoot.
Fire them off.
Okay, perfect. So the first one, product sampling and gifting.
It's a must. 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. All right. Celebrity partnerships.
2.
Okay. Ouch.
I
Pop-up stores.
think it depends. I think you need to have a clear message and a clear objective of what you're trying to accomplish through it. And that will determine whether or not it's a 1 or a 10.
Okay. But sounds like there's not an immediate ROI.
I would say that they are not an ROI driving tactic. To me, they're more of a marketing lever, and it's a way to drive awareness of your brand experience and your brand expression.
Okay. What about TikTok Shop?
Depends.
Okay.
For my brand personally right now, I'd say it's a 2.
Okay. Amazon streaming TV.
Jury's out.
Okay.
We are testing it.
Yes, we are. What about Amazon DSP?
Yes, I think there's an important role for DSP. We have some incrementality testing about to go live, so I'll be able to give you a number any moment.
Maybe we'll have that case study
Yeah.
by the time this episode comes out.
It may be a 9, it may be a 3. We're going to find out.
All right, let's do it. What about AI creative in advertising and the use of AI?
I think the use of AI is undoubtedly relevant. So I'd say use of AI is a 10 out of 10. Our job as marketers is to know how to use the tech and be able to apply it. How it's applied and where it's used is the job of the marketer to determine what makes sense. So should we be putting AI-generated models in creative about skincare? I'm not sure, especially as a brand who's speaking about natural beauty, organic results, achievable, realistic benefits, reasons to believe. I think once you start getting into people that aren't real, it's questionable.
Right. Fabricated almost of what the result
I mean, it's
be.
definitely efficient from a cost perspective, but does it actually reflect what we are trying to promote as an industry to our customer?
So on the flip side, what about user-generated content?
10 out of 10.
And it's easy.
Yes, ish. I think, again, for UGC to be worthwhile, you've got to be very clear in what your brand stands for and what the message is that you want your user-generated content to convey, because otherwise you lose some of the control over that content. So you have to be very confident in knowing what's going to come out of that.
No surprises.
No surprises. Now, is the quality of the content as marketers exactly what we want? Maybe not, but I think at the end of the day, that's what resonates with the customer. And so it's our job to figure out where brand content comes in and where UGC plays a role.
Yeah. All right. This one is a hot topic, I think, in the industry. Influencer trips.
Love that question.
Scale of 1 to 10.
I'd probably put it at a 4 or a 5.
Okay.
If I had to put a number. Yes.
Okay.
Reason being, you need to have a purpose behind it. So I think there are brands out there, shall remain nameless, who do them for the sake of just doing a trip and getting some buzz and driving some earned media. They're a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
However, if you have something that is unique and authentic to your brand and a story that requires a trip to tell. So let's take Elemis, for example, where our ingredients are sourced from the countryside of Britain or rose farms in a beautiful area of the UK, for example. It would make a lot of sense to me to take influencers and press to experience that so they can showcase that to a broader audience.
Can you take vendors?
Yes.
That sounds lovely.
So intentional trips, I think, do make sense. And that's why I put it at a 4 or a 5, because to me, if it's intentional and you're telling your brand story, in that case, it would be like an 8 because you're bringing it to life in a very authentic way. But if it's a trip for a trip's sake, it's a 2.
Yeah.
So average would land us in the middle.
And what about partnerships outside of your industry?
I would put that at a 7.
Okay.
Because I think that if the two brands have common values, what can be valuable to both brands is exposure to their communities. And so partnering with somebody that is in a different industry, there's obviously no competitive threat, but you get to borrow their equity and you get to expose yourselves to each other's first-party data.
Yep. So, Lil, Amazon sometimes gets a rep of being a channel that is maybe more replenishable, not necessarily incremental. We know that not to be true. But when you think about Amazon being a part of your broader omni-channel strategy, how do you see and leverage Amazon as an opportunity? And how do you see it as even a full funnel opportunity?
Holistically, I would say that as a channel, Amazon is very much about capturing demand, right? And so in my mind, you have to be where the customer is and you have to show up where they want to shop. For a brand to win, you can't just treat the channel as a transaction. You have to continue to flow your messaging through that funnel. So as much as we can drive demand for the brand outside of the channel, we also need to continue that story on platform and think about how that messaging pulls through the customer at every touch point. So whether that is the content that we're serving on our Amazon P pages, for example, how does that narrative actually deepen their experience with the brand? Are we perfect? No, I don't think any brand is perfect. So it's definitely an evolution, but it's one that is important to continue working on. From an advertising perspective, same story, right? Continue the narrative in your various different ad units, depending on where that customer is in the funnel. I think being able to follow that customer through the journey is important. Understanding who is shopping on the platform is obviously critical so that you know how to tell that narrative and capture that demand. And then thinking about it as an opportunity to deepen your brand story with that customer. So for Elemis, we have a very large and successful spa business on the ocean. Many people may not know this, but we have spas on most cruise liners out in the ocean. So if you take a Disney cruise, if you take a Carnival cruise, a P&O cruise, and you go to the spa and you have your massage or you have a facial, 9 times out of 10, that's going to be an Elemis treatment. We do over 2 million of those a year on the ocean. Majority of those customers are US based. So when they come back to land and they've had that wonderful experience and they want to repurchase our brand, it's absolutely our responsibility to make sure that experience is continued where they can have access to our products. A lot of that, it happens on Amazon as well as our own website, of course, and various different retail partners, but Amazon is a huge part of that.
And so Amazon is the behemoth. They're the biggest online marketplace. How do you think about some of these other marketplaces that are coming and gaining momentum? So there's Walmart's marketplace, there's the anticipated Ulta marketplace, and the retail media that is going to be available. As you think of Elemis, which is more premium positioned, are those marketplaces that are interesting to you, given you want to be where customers shop? Or are you still sensitive about being at retailers that have a more premium positioning?
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be more of the latter.
hmm
We are a luxury skincare brand
Yes.
and we must protect that equity. So I would say, first and foremost, we should evaluate those platforms for what they offer and the experiences they deliver to the customer. So is it a premium experience? And I think you can answer for the most part on Amazon, it is,
hmm
right? I can order what I want online anywhere I want, and it is 9 times out of 10 delivered to me next day, right? So I can rely on that as a great experience. What these other marketplaces are going to bring in the future, I'm not sure. It's going to be a bit of wait and see, test and learn. You may think that's a little bit of a cop out, but I think something like an Ulta beauty marketplace, for example, that naturally would make sense, at least as an intuitive place to explore, because we're already sold there.
Right.
The beauty customer is already shopping there. So how is that actually going to manifest in a marketplace type of environment? I hope it will be as wonderful as the in-store shopping experience is, and that continues, right? When you start to go into some more of the mass retail opportunities, like a Walmart, for example, that's probably less attractive to us because it is more mass and it's not necessarily where our customer is.
Correct. As a marketer who knows the importance of brand building, brand investment, especially for luxury skincare,
Mhm.
how do you keep your CFO happy?
Mhm. Great question. To me, it's about being smart with your money,
Mhm.
right? So it's about how to do more with less. And I know that's what everybody wants right now, and that's what every CFO wants to hear. But the reality is that's always possible. So I think we can always do things to evaluate how our dollars are spent and what opportunities exist to break down silos and bring teams together to think differently about how you spend your dollars. I think we've done a lot of things together as partners to optimize that investment on Amazon, for example. Yes, of course, everybody wants to improve their ROAS, but not every tactic is a ROAS driving tactic.
Mhm.
So I think there is education back to our finance partners about what the objectives are for our brand that are going to help us grow. I think there's been less focus over time in training and mentoring marketing talent to be critical thinkers about what the broader objective is for their brand.
Mhm.
And therefore, what are the jobs to be done? And following on from that, what are the strategies and tactics that need to be put in place to accomplish that? For example, on Elemis, we know that we have very strong conversion from awareness to consideration and down to conversion, right? The customer actually moves through that funnel in a very positive way, like in an industry leading kind of way, beating benchmarks. However, we don't have very high awareness. In fact, we've got quite low awareness. So as a marketer, that tells me that the job we have to do is go broad, introduce the right people, of course, for a prestige luxury brand to our brand, and then bring them down the funnel by telling a very relevant, engaging, and both emotionally and functionally interesting story and differentiated story that our brand actually does have to offer.
So, Lil, tell me, what are some of the biggest mistakes brands make when building a full funnel marketing strategy?
I think there's a couple of things. And I think the first one is not being clear on the message you want to communicate. The number one thing to set you up for success in building a holistic marketing strategy is to be single-minded and focused on what that main message is you want the customer to take away. And ideally, that main message is connected to motivating a purchase at the bottom of that funnel. I think that there's too much focus in many cases on pushing something out versus thinking holistically about that journey and capturing somebody's attention at the top of the funnel and then pulling them through in a very thoughtful way to convert them to that purchase. There's oftentimes too much focus on the upper funnel and what's the commercial, what is the ad that we're going to make, and then pushing that out everywhere, and then potentially forgetting about the bottom of the funnel. And perhaps once the consumer makes it to the end of that journey, what they see is different to what they were served at the top of that funnel. I would summarize to say that the number one mistake I see in general is not being clear on your purpose and your single-minded message and being thoughtful about carrying that throughout the entire journey and customer experience.
I think that goes back to the story with Amazon, because I've seen this where brands have amazing brand awareness story. It's great on actual commercials, social. And then you go to their Amazon listing and it's two e-commerce images, and that story has not followed all the way to the purchase funnel on Amazon. And sometimes even direct to consumer websites lack that.
I would agree. And I would also say we actually have a huge campaign going live this week, which we're very excited about. It's the first time we've actually ever supported our hero moisturizer. Selfish plug, Pro Collagen Marine Cream SPF. So we're very excited about this campaign, and we've put a lot of thought and effort into doing exactly this because it is a very big passion point of mine to say, yes, we can push a campaign in paid, in broad reach media, but if you don't show up in the same way once that customer lands on your P page to shop it, the scent trail goes cold. And they're left wondering, is this the right product? Is this the same brand? I want to see what I saw so that I know that I'm in the right place and buying the right thing. So for us, pushing this live has not just been about the campaign. It's actually been about how do we deepen that story when that customer lands on those pages to further consider investing in this moisturizer.
And customers are so finicky and easily distracted as well.
True.
And so with that though, would you say it's better to focus on a hero product and having the full funnel strategy be more product specific to drive stronger conversion? Or is it really about telling the story of Elemis and skincare as a more broader reaching story? And then as they get through the funnel, here are the specific products to purchase.
I think what you're asking is like probably one of the biggest questions in marketing right now.
Okay.
And if we were to rewind 10 or 15 years ago, you would get into a space where it was very black and white, that you do a brand campaign and then you have a product campaign, right? Now those things are so tightly connected. Your brand is your product in many ways. And as a marketer, we need to think about how the brand story actually comes to life through our products. So in my mind, the way that it works is that your campaign should be telling a brand message, and that is grounded in the product that you're ultimately selling. What we've been able to accomplish with all our amazing partners on this particular project is to do exactly that, is to unlock the story of our brand, inspired by the sea, inspired by nature, ingredients that are sourced from nature and the sea, powered by biotech to deliver amazing results, right? At the end of the day, the brand philosophy and the brand purpose are there, and that story, that emotional construct is what ultimately wins the heart. And that narrative continues throughout that customer journey to capture that demand and close the sale with the product benefits, deepened stories on ingredients and why we chose those specific ingredients, product reviews, press awards, all the things that, as you get further down the funnel, help convince the customer that this is worthwhile for their dollar and their share of wallet. I think all of that needs to be wrapped up in the same story, and the dots all need to connect. They can't be separate things exclusive from each other.
What is your opinion on ways to grow other products that, say, aren't your top sellers? The messy middle or the sleeping beauties, whatever you want to call it. Or do you think it's better to just focus on what really has established the brand? And I know this is a tricky question because beauty is fast moving. Product innovation is so vital to remaining relevant in this industry. So, how do you find that balance when you are assigned to do more with less?
I think it's about prioritizing what level of the funnel you need to lean into for the various different jobs to be done. In my mind, at an awareness brand building level, that should be focused on your core heroes, because that's where you can connect what the brand is about, why the brand is different, what's special about it, and like I said before, how that hangs together with some hero products. That's how we can build equity. That's how we can sell the lifestyle and the experience of the brand. People are then piqued in interest to engage with that brand. And as they're searching for other products, that's where I think some of the tech magic comes into play to make sure that we've got all of our tagging right on our P pages. We're optimized for search. We are thinking about how the customer is shopping, whether it be for serums, whether it be for masks, eye creams, body products, shower soaks, whatever it might be. We have phenomenal portfolio of products, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they all need to be supported in the same way. And that's the magic of managing a portfolio, is to be able to be smart about how to generate demand for the brand, but then capture that demand for all of the other products and portfolio items at that mid and lower level. Does that answer your question?
It does. And what also popped in my head is when you think about tracking success, what are some of your favorite tools to do that at different areas of the funnel? And how frequently are you looking at some of those metrics? Because, yeah, sales is a daily metric, especially at Elemis.
Yeah.
But other things like LTV and client retention, those are much longer look back windows. So
Yeah.
how are you also bringing in the data to making those decisions?
Yeah, I think It's an evolution, and I think the company is making a lot of progress in that space. As I mentioned, this is the first time we've supported our moisturizer with a large campaign like this. So we have brand lift studies in place to measure the impact on awareness and purchase intent. There's other research going on to measure brand equity and shifts there. That's definitely a longer term burn, though. We know that. It's a longer term payback, but I think your leading indicators in real time of what you're optimizing for. So we're optimizing for impressions. How much new traffic are we seeing to site? What's happening with our bounce rate? What are they engaging with? How much of that is converting? It's simple stuff. I don't think we need to overcomplicate things. I think we can go back to basics and look at the data that we have in front of us to actually see what the consumer behavior is when they're engaging with this content. Are they watching the videos all the way to the end? That tells us whether or not the content's engaging. Do they then click on that content? Do they take an action? And to your question, how do we measure the true success of that? I would say it's very much in terms of acquisition of new customers. How many are we getting? How much are they buying? Is it different to our loyal customers? Do they behave differently? So I think that there are things that we can look at that are immediate indicators of what may potentially be a longer term build over time.
As a marketer, how do you think about generational marketing versus lifestyle marketing and targeting? I feel like there was a lot of conversation in beauty of how do you attract Gen Z? That's not really who Elemis is going after, but there is something to be said too about more so focused on lifestyle versus trying to meet this specific generation stereotype.
I did a lot of work on this when I was at Estee Lauder Companies on Bobbi Brown in particular. And we actually had a published case study with Meta that proved that creative is targeting.
Mm.
There's a lot of depth behind what that means. Essentially, if we unpack it, it basically means go broad, but go broad with creative that speaks to the audiences that you are trying to attract. So if you're trying to appeal to a Gen Xer, have a Gen Xer in your creative and speak to the things that are important to them if that's what your product actually does. On Elemis, for example, our core target is that older millennial. She's 35 plus. She's probably more likely 40 plus, 45, right? She doesn't want to see the 20-year-old. She wants to know that if I'm going to invest money in this product, is it going to help reduce my fine lines and wrinkles? Mm-hmm. Is it going to address the concerns that I have? I want to see somebody that looks like me in that creative. Similarly, when you go into diversity of skin tones and skin textures, people want to know if you're saying this works for acne-prone skin, show me the improvement. If this works for women of color, show that to me. Show me the person that this is actually proving it does what you're saying it does. I think generational targeting for me is actually done through creative versus technical targeting, but it comes back to being really thoughtful about who your brand is, what your objectives are, and who your product is right for, and who you're ultimately targeting.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've seen this in your career, but I've seen it in mine, which is that there has always been a huge emphasis on the technical side of marketing.
Yeah.
And it really does feel in a lot of cases that creative is an afterthought.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing because you think of the Mad Men era where there wasn't really the technical component. It was all about creative. I'll be really curious to see with AI now making creative more affordable and accessible if that does come round circle.
Yeah.
Because now there's conversations of marketers producing 2,000 different forms of creative that they can then test. And Meta is rolling out their new tooling to help really support that new way of marketing. And curious if you think we may then lose some of the soul that really good creative has, and how can brands really prioritize the creative process when there is that stress of immediate growth or immediate improvement in metrics?
Yeah. This is something I'm personally very passionate about. I do think that there's a lot of marketing that's lost its soul,
Mhm.
especially over the course of the last 15-ish years. And digital has come into play. I think there's a lot of laziness out there. And what differentiates brands from each other, the ones who win versus the ones who don't, are the ones that are tapping into a real consumer insight. They're solving a problem that they've identified. They're filling a gap. They're filling a white space. And to me, the volume of assets is actually just versioning. It doesn't eliminate the need for a compelling message, something that is relevant to the customer that you're trying to attract. The volume is about differentiation of how that story is delivered. The story is still the most critical thing. The insight informs that, and how you tell that narrative is where AI can come into play and help. We've literally just lived through this with the campaign that we've brought to market now. The tagline is "See change, results you can see, radiance you can feel." So it's both emotional and it's functional, speaking to the product. But once you get into all of the assets, and there's hundreds and hundreds of assets, it's just versioning of that message in different ways with different benefits or different RTBs or different colored backgrounds, or the product shot in a different way to capture someone's attention at a different angle in a different moment on a different site, right? The most important thing in my mind is the narrative that the brand is trying to communicate, which should be linked to their unique point of difference and what they have to offer the customer. That is, in my mind, the differentiator between successful brands who will be here for the long term and the brands that are a flash in the pan.
Mhm. I saw a trend where all these beauty brands are posting with butter, like putting their products in butter, or donuts or food incorporated into the product shot. Like those are just flash in the pan trends, and it doesn't align with the true identity of the brand or the product.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the challenging things for marketers to manage these days is how are you present on a platform like TikTok, for example, in a way that's authentic to your brand, but also relevant to the trends that are happening there. Butter yellow is the color of the day. For us as Elemis, butter yellow actually can play well to our advantage because of our cleansing balm. That's the color of our cleansing balm. So to me, that's a natural fit into that trend. But like you said, food, ballerina core, some of these other trends, we have to evaluate whether or not that trend actually adds value back to our brand and whether or not we want to play.
Besides Elemis, who else do you think is doing a really good job with this?
I think it's really tough. I think there are brands that lend themselves more towards leaning into trends than others. There are a bunch of other beauty brands in the industry, let's say they're more Gen Z leaning. So it's natural to assume that they would be strong in this space. You could look at The Ordinary, Summer Fridays, Glow Recipe. They are Gen Z born brands and really have risen to success through their ability to tap into those trends and that Gen Z audience. But the nemesis of that is that you've always got to be keeping up with the latest trend and always be thinking about what's new and what's different. Over time, that's hard to keep up with, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And that takes energy to constantly be on that front foot. I think with a heritage brand like ours, the challenge for us is how you lean into your heritage and you pay homage to your brand in a culturally relevant way that does respect the equity and is still considered relevant. And I think we've managed to do that quite successfully with the growth that we're seeing across all of our platforms and retailers in the marketplace. We're very much outgrowing the category exponentially. So I think that it proves that heritage brands can play a role in the beauty sector in general and can find their way when competing against some of these newer, younger brands.
Well, Lil, this was so much fun, and I learned so much from you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Laura. This was really fun. Always a pleasure.